What if I told you that there was an NBA player so good at crossovers that defenders were literally afraid to guard him? From creating a Baller's Life mixtape in the league with his highlights to literally inventing a move that revolutionized the NBA, Jamal Crawford was truly one of the greatest ball handlers in NBA history. But here's the crazy part, because Jamal wasn't some superstar starter. In fact, he spent most of his career coming off the bench, and although this resulted in him winning 3 Sixth Man of the Year awards and becoming 4th all-time in fourth quarter scoring, it never really allowed him to get the same shine as other superstars. So why was someone this talented never a starting player, and how did he even become so unstoppable with the ball anyway? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the 2000 NBA draft. June 28th, 2000.
With the 8th pick in the 2000 NBA draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Jamal Crawford from the University of Michigan.
I'm doing a press conference 15 minutes later for Cleveland, like, you just been traded to Chicago. I'm like, what?
Jamal Crawford, a Seattle native who made a name for himself initially at Rainier High School before dominating during his short stint at Michigan due to NCAA violations, had been preparing for this moment his whole life because Jamal fell in love with the game of basketball.
It was my safety haven because I was always, my mom and dad were never together. So I was always with one or with the other, and that ball, looking back, kept me safe.
And specifically, one aspect of it.
I was the kid who had a ball and somebody be walking towards me, somebody going to work, business person. I'm dribbling, I do a move. They walk past like, what's he doing? This kid's crazy, what's he doing? So now looking back, that's where my footwork came from. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, oh, okay. Now I just became one with the ball. I used to sleep with my ball. So I've never done a cone drill in my life, never. I've never done it, because to me, my thinking was that cone's not a 6'6" 2 guard who can move and be athletic. So I'm like, let me just play and figure it out. And so I just kept the ball with me. And so when I'm dribbling, it's almost like when you're walking. You're not thinking left foot, right foot. You're just walking. I can lose the ball and go into a whole nother move where you thought you had it, because I became one with the ball.
Combine Jamal's incredible passion for basketball with his desire to dominate everyone in front of him.
Then I was trying to embarrass every single person I played against.
I have sprained a couple ankles when I was younger, especially.
And Crawford was ready to help guide the rebuilding Bulls back in the championship direction. However, playing behind 5 other guards, Crawford initially struggled to even see the floor, resulting in Jamal's confidence beginning to fall.
So I'm trying to figure out, to the point at first when I'm coming down court, I'm looking at coach like kind of running that. He's like, man, just play. But I was so insecure and I'm still young and I'm trying to figure it out. And so I had so many days where I would go play at the park with guys during the season, or I go to a YMCA just to keep my confidence.
Combine this with the Bulls front office, led by general manager Jerry Krause, who was driven to prove that he could build a championship-winning team without the help of his former superstar Michael Jordan. Any potential trade assets for the upcoming Big 3 free agents were often relegated to the bench.
Now, he truly believed that we were going to sign Grant Hill, Tim Duncan, and Tracy McGrady. Like he said, with all of his cap money, he believed we were going to sign all 3 of them.
Yet, as the Seattle native's rookie season was rounding out, Jamal, potentially in a sneaky move by Krause to increase his value, began to see more and more minutes.
And by the end of this season, you can go back and look, I scored 17 points 3 of the last 5 games. Like, okay, I got it.
But while this decision ultimately failed in achieving Krause's ultimate goal, Jamal's play had caught the eye of a certain former Bulls shooting guard, the man the 20-year-old Crawford had idolized his whole life.
Tim Grover, I'm in Chicago, and he's like, yo, MJ said you can meet him. Like, well, it's 6 in the morning. I'm like, what? Man, I took off down there so fast. I got downtown in probably 30 minutes. I get there like 6:30, whatever it was, 6:20. And I walk in, it's just us 3 in the weight room, and I can't stop looking at him. And obviously it's just us 3, but I'm not even talking because I don't want to ruin his workout. He's talking in between sets or whatever, and he's like, yeah, man, I've liked your game. He's like, this summer we could work out.
Michael Jordan, seeing the potential in this shifty guard, began to mentor Jamal.
Like, if the best player ever is saying you got game and he believes in you, I'm not even worried about anybody else.
Which not only saw his confidence rise to new peaks, but Crawford featured in one of the most iconic commercials of all time, in which a 39-year-old Jordan competed one-on-one against his younger self who was played by Jamal. However, just as his incoming sophomore season was about to start, Jamal tragically tore his ACL in a scrimmage, resulting in the Seattle native missing the majority of his second season. So even with backing from the game's current greatest player, could Crawford even get any minutes during his third season? Was a shifty, scoring-focused shooting guard really able to help teams win games? And real quick, can you check if you're subscribed? If you're not, you might want to change that, but you don't have to, it's your choice. Well, thankfully for Crawford, with the appointment of three-time champion, former Bulls big man Bill Cartwright into the head coaching role, Jamal would finally get the opportunity to not only start, but showcase how truly gifted he was.
Crawford starts to drive, crossover move, leaner off the... Oh, Jamal caught it!
Because not only was he scoring like any other guard would, but the now 22-year-old was pulling out moves the NBA had never seen before.
And for Crawford, Jamal, leaner, wow! I got this crowd pretty excited with that move.
Taking back, I made it when I was 16 on accident.
But it's ultimately what happened in Chicago's final game of their 2002-2003 season, which truly changed everything for Jamal Crawford, as facing off against another idol, the Philadelphia 76ers point guard, Allen Iverson, Crawford got to work.
Like, I felt my game going to a whole nother level, and it was making its way around the thing. Like, man, that little Bulls guard, because I hadn't done it yet. Like, man, that Bulls guard can go. I'm telling you, that Bulls guard can go.
Jamal would pour in bucket after bucket, and while Iverson had scored a shocking 41, Crawford's early career high 33-point night had thankfully seen his Bulls in their failed season on a high. Yet, throughout the 2003-2004 season, Chicago had failed to build any amount of momentum. And while Jamal was still continuing to wow everyone who saw him play,
I told Roman Madrowski that. He's like, this is one of my last days on the beat. It's like, why don't you get 50? And I was shooting and everything was going in. I was like, I think today I can do it. And then I got 50.
By going out and dropping 50 points on the road against the Raptors and improving his averages to 17.3 points a night, the Bulls had only won 23 games. A horrific win-loss record, which saw the franchise begin to question what they were actually doing and begin to make some serious changes.
It was crazy because Isaiah Thomas was the first person to call me at 12:01, when I was a free agent. And he said, we want you, we feel like you fit in perfect with us. I was like, damn, the Knicks. I locked in on the Knicks.
While Jamal's decision to take his game to its greatest stage of Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks, much like the Chicago Bulls, were also stuck in a winning hangover. Because even with Crawford finally being presented with the opportunity he had always dreamed of, not only being handed a true starting role, but the keys to New York's offense, which allowed him to put up nights such as his 41-point game against the Bobcats and a 40-piece versus the Suns shortly after, the Knicks still only won a terrible 33 games, resulting in general manager Isaiah Thomas making a change not only to the Knicks, but to Jamal's whole NBA career. As with the appointment of the 2004 NBA championship winning head coach Larry Brown to the Knicks leadership role for the 2005-2006 season, a massive move was coming Crawford's way.
And he trusted me, like I had the ball late and everything. He's like, it's not about who starts, it's who finishes. He always said that. He always drilled that in my head, always drilled it. And so I learned a lot from Coach Brown. He's actually probably the best teacher I've ever played for.
Because Brown decided to bring Jamal off the bench, a move done to highlight Crawford's elite scoring talents and taking the pressure off him from doing anything else. A decision which resulted in Jamal being the first of New York's bench, known as the sixth man, that allowed him to focus on one thing and one thing only: getting buckets.
I think the crossover is so effective because you can use it with either hand. You can go either way with it. A lot of people don't want to be crossed over, so sometimes you set it up just by doing a regular straight line drive, and that sets up the crossover for later on in the game. Something
that Jamal was elite at, as throughout his first season as a bench guard, the Seattle product was scoring at will, crossing people out of their shoes, and saving his Knicks with incredibly clutch buckets late in games.
And he's going to take it up with Crawford. Garden crowd on its feet. Crawford on on the pull-up. It's up. It goes.
However, once again, New York simply wasn't a playoff team. Even with Jamal putting up one of the most special performances at Madison Square Garden of all time in the following season.
See Francis out or something like that. And then I scored 52 in 39 minutes. So I missed my first 4 shots. And then I hit 16 in a row at 42. And I came out the game at 52 with 7 minutes to go. So I still think like, man, that could have been 60, at least 60. I could have got 8 points in 7 minutes.
And perhaps hitting one of the most unique moves in NBA history against Kirk Heinrich.
Now here's Crawford the other way.
The Knicks only managed to win 33 games in the 06-07 season, then mustering up just 23 in the 07-08 season. A tragic fact, which, even though Jamal was averaging 20.6 points and 5 assists during the 2007-2008 season, that saw an unfortunate label stuck to Crawford by GMs, because most front offices simply saw Jamal as an empty stat player, someone who, if they traded for or signed, wouldn't help them achieve further success. To make matters worse, despite being moved to another struggling squad, the Golden State Warriors, for the 2008-2009 season, and continuing to not only put up insane numbers such as his 50-piece for Charlotte, but breaking the ankles of Boston Celtics shooting guard Ray Allen.
What was crazy about it was he fell, but then he put his hands out like he was Jesus for real. Like he just laid down for a second. He laid down for a second. I was like, hold up, man, that's Jesus.
General managers' opinions still remained, as in their eyes, Jamal was not a winning player, and perhaps Crawford's time in the league was going to be coming to a quick end. Or was it? Well, after the Warriors opted to move on from Jamal and the Seattle native ended up with the Atlanta Hawks, something incredible was about to happen, as the Hawks weren't a franchise in disarray hoping that Crawford would somehow magically turn them into a championship contending team. No, they already were one. Their decision to acquire Jamal was done for one reason and one reason only, because their head coach, Mike Woodson, much like Larry Brown, had a specific role in mind for Jamal: come off the bench and lead the league in scoring. Something that Crawford was more than willing to do, as the Seattle native was desperate to rid himself of the negative label which had been stamped all over him, and prove to the world that he truly was a winning basketball player.
The one thing in life that's constant is change. And so no matter what the situation is, you're going to have to change. I think if you don't change, you die.
But on opening night, something unusual happened. Crawford, who had once again averaged over 20 points during his short stint with the Warriors, came off Woodson's bench as planned and only added in 3 points? Mike Woodson, angered by Jamal's lackluster performance, brought him into his office and made it blatantly clear exactly what was required of the talented shooting guard.
He's like, yo, you got to go lead the league in scoring off the bench. You got the same green light you've had your career. I'm like, oh, okay, for real, okay, I'm going.
So Jamal, facing off against the Portland Trail Blazers 2 games later, began to do just that. With each silky smooth bucket Crawford added in as the Hawks' 6th man, his point total and Atlanta's championship hopes began to rise.
6 to shoot. Over Bridge, and he cans it.
And with Jamal Crawford ending this night having scored 27, the Seattle native was truly ready to be a contributor on a title-winning team. Yet, Jamal's dominance didn't end here, as not only did he continue to provide starter numbers off the bench, averaging 18 points, but Crawford was quite literally adding wins to the Hawks' record.
Crawford, mid-floor, big 3 to win it.
Breaking ankles, and finally preparing for his first ever playoff series against the Milwaukee Bucks. But given this was now Jamal's 10th season in the NBA, was he actually capable of performing in the postseason? And even if he was, could Atlanta really go one step further and advance all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals? April 30th, 2010. Despite the Hawks rocketing out to an easy 2-0 lead against the 6th-seeded Bucks, Milwaukee had shockingly not only won games 3 and 4, but succeeded in 3 straight victories, meaning they were just a single W away from eliminating Atlanta. However, after a literal decade in the league, Crawford wasn't going to let this opportunity go to waste. So Jamal would pull out every trick from his bag, pouring in a crucial 24 points in their Game 6 victory, and then 22 as the Hawks just made it into the second round for a matchup against last year's Eastern Conference champions, the Orlando Magic. But Orlando, led by big man Dwight Howard, hungry to once again not just return to the ultimate round, but crown themselves with the franchise's first ever title, were quite literally unstoppable. Even a 17-point per game average off the bench from Crawford was nowhere near enough, as the Magic won by an average of 25.2 points each night and dominated Atlanta 4-0. Yet there was a silver lining to this embarrassing ending.
It's my honor here today to present Jamal Crawford from the Atlanta Hawks for the 2009 and 10 NBA Sixth Man Award presented by Kia Motors.
So, now that Crawford was finally on a legit team and playing under a leader who believed in his talent, could the fresh 6th Man of the Year help guide his Hawks to the promised land? Or would the second round of the playoffs be as far as Jamal ever got? Well, thanks to Atlanta deciding to fire Coach Woodson due to their second round embarrassment at the hands of the Magic, and appointing Larry Drew, a new leader who moved his bench scoring guard into more of a catch and shoot role, both Jamal's numbers and the Hawks' wins began to fall. However, the squad was still immensely talented, and even in a different role, Crawford, thanks to nights such as his 36 against the Raptors, 34 versus the Clippers, and 31 on the Kings, still added 14.2 points on average, and the Hawks were still in playoff contention, finishing as the 5th seed in the East. But would their new leadership really see them go one step further? Was Jamal playing in a more restricted role actually helpful? Or would Atlanta once again come far short of their Larry O'Brien goal? April 16th, 2011. Once again facing off against the Orlando Magic, this time in just the first round, Atlanta was desperate to get revenge for last year's embarrassing failure. Therefore, Crawford got to work.
Marvin Williams kicks it to Crawford. Got it!
Not only would he drop 23 points and 5 assists in their Game 1 victory, but the Seattle native would go on to average 24 points as his Hawks sprinted out to a 3-1 lead. Now, just a single W away from the second round. But with the Orlando Magic responding in Game 5, saving their season with a huge 25-point victory, doubts began to arise regarding the Hawks' ability to actually put away the Magic. Yet, Jamal had no interest in these beliefs and continuing to be bullied by Orlando. So, he came out during Game 6 and added a vital
Catch and shoot for Crawford. Good for 3!
19 points, allowing his franchise to get revenge for their failure last season. But could the Hawks, set to face the number 1 seeded Derrick Rose-led Chicago Bulls, really make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? Or would this matchup be the end of their season? May 2nd, 2011. Faced with a challenge most analysts thought Atlanta would never be able to achieve, Jamal Crawford, hungry to truly prove that he was in fact a winner, went out with the goal of erasing that narrative.
Crawford driving around Korver, scoops it in.
Which, thanks to Crawford putting up a solid 22 points and their starting shooting guard, Joe Johnson, adding 34, Atlanta had won, and the Hawks were now fueled with confidence. Perhaps they could actually do this. Well, the Chicago Bulls, led by the 2011 Most Valuable Player, Derrick Rose, and defensive-minded head coach Tom Thibodeau, weren't ready to go home anytime soon, because armed with elite wing defender Luol Deng, Chicago honed in on shutting down both Johnson and Jamal, holding Crawford to just an 8-point average on 27% shooting from the field over their next 5 battles, resulting in the Bulls advancing after a Game 6 victory to the Eastern Conference Finals. A devastating failure, which was only made worse by Jamal Crawford's turbulent 2011-2012 campaign. As faced with the lockout-shortened season, the Seattle native opted to sign with his technical hometown team, bring back the Sonics guys, come on please, the Portland Trail Blazers, to try and fill the role that rising shooting guard Brandon Roy had left due to his abrupt retirement. However, despite leading the whole league in free throw percentage, the situation in the Pacific Northwest wasn't exactly ideal. With the Blazers moving on from their head coach mid-season, Crawford's opportunities to do what he did best constantly changing, and Portland failing to enter the postseason, Jamal was ready to move on from Portland and desperate to return to a winning franchise for the 2012-2013 season. But would any squad actually want a player like Jamal on their team, or was he doomed to forever just be an empty stat player?
Freed, what went into your decision to come here?
Just to see where the team was going, to see the pieces they have in place. It's a first-class organization. Coach Del Negro, I'm a huge fan of, and this was a place I've always looked at like, wow, they're really putting it together, and just to be a part of that, to have Chris Paul call me and Blake and those guys call me, and Chauncey and DeAndre Jordan, all those guys, just to say they had much respect for my game. They wanted me here. It meant the world to me, so for me it was a no-brainer.
The Los Angeles Clippers, thanks to landing athletic power forward Blake Griffin with the 2009 #1 pick and trading for elite point guard Chris Paul, had been building a rising franchise, winning their first ever playoff series since 2006, right before Jamal arrived. To make things even better, LA's head coach, Vinny Del Negro, clearly saw Crawford in the same light as Larry Brown and Mike Woodson, giving his bench guard the greenest light that Vinny could, resulting in some insane things happening. Firstly, on opening night for the 2012-2013 season, Jamal would drop a super efficient 29 points on 70% shooting, then adding in 30 against the Houston Rockets later in the season, and overall contributing an average of 16.5 points. But it wasn't just Crawford succeeding, as Los Angeles would not only grab a franchise record 56 wins, but set another standard by winning 17 in a row early on, setting up a first-round series matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. And guess what? The positive news just kept coming, because as the buzzer rang throughout Staples Center in Game 2, it was the Clippers who were now just 2 wins away from advancing into the second round. However, it was here where everything would begin to fall apart for LA, as the Memphis Grizzlies would begin to figure out their rivals throughout Games 3 and 4, resulting in Tennessee's NBA franchise not only tying the series, but going on to incredibly eliminate Los Angeles in Game 6. Yet, despite this incredible fall-off by the rising Clippers, their future, and Jamal's, was incredibly bright. But why?
It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you our next Senior Vice President of Basketball Operations and head coach, and the seasoned and steady hand that we're going to rely on to take us to championship level, Mr. Doc Rivers.
Thank you. We don't need any applause or anything.
Doc Rivers, the coach who had guided his Boston Celtics side to the 2008 title, was ready to do the same with LA. And while Jamal had received respect and opportunity under Coach Vinny, Rivers doubled down on Del Negro's trust, a fact made clear by Jamal recording 6 30 or more point nights, leading the league in scoring off the bench with an 18.6 average, Jamal winning his second Sixth Man of the Year award, and the Clippers setting a new franchise record with 56 wins. However, under Rivers, these regular season achievements meant nothing. Doc was brought in for one thing and one thing only: championships. The first step on that long road to the franchise's first Larry O'Brien trophy, the rising Golden State Warriors, a franchise who in their last season had incredibly eliminated the third-seeded Denver Nuggets and given the eventual NBA finalist San Antonio Spurs a serious run for their money in round 2, something that Golden State mirrored throughout this 2013-2014 first-round battle against LA, resulting in it all coming down to this: Game 7, win or go home. Knowing this might be his final time donning a Clipper uniform this season, and desperate to reach his first ever conference finals, Jamal Crawford poured in everything he had.
Back at 5. Remember, Clay's got 2 fouls. And Crawford bombs in at 3.
the shifty Seattle native's 22 points in just 29 minutes of play had incredibly seen his squad finally take that next step and advance into round 2. But now just 4 wins away from the Western Conference Finals, could the Clippers really get it done? Or would this season result in another embarrassing failure for LA? May 5th, 2014, facing off against the 2012 NBA finalist Oklahoma City Thunder and their superstars Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, Los Angeles knew how difficult of a task this was about to be. However, the Clippers were finally ready, with Chris Paul going out and recording a shocking 32-point and 10-assist night, Blake Griffin adding in 23, and Crawford's 17 off the bench. Crawford! LA had done it, now holding a 1-0 lead. But OKC, desperate to return once again to the game's ultimate stage, would change their defensive approach. While Jamal would record 18 points in Game 3 and 20 in Game 4, his struggles during the two franchises' 2nd and 6th battles, combined with Crawford's overall inefficiency, shooting just 34% from the field, it wasn't LA moving on, a tragic fact which continued to haunt them throughout the 2014-2015 season, as despite winning 56 games yet again, eliminating the defending champion San Antonio Spurs in round 1, and being just a single W away from the Western Conference Finals against the James Harden-led Houston Rockets, everything would come crumbling down once again, because the Clippers would shockingly blow their 3-1 lead in round 2, seeing them eliminated for their 3rd straight campaign, far short of their title dreams. A devastating truth that even with Crawford winning his 3rd 6th Man of the Year award in the following 2015-2016 season, that just continued, as in Game 4 of their 1st round matchup against the Portland Trail Blazers, tragedy would strike the seemingly cursed Clippers yet again.
Bro, there's one stretch in the playoffs. In a 5-minute stretch, we miss our 2 best players. Blake get hurt. It's important. You can look it up. 5 minutes later, CP gets hurt. They're done for the playoffs. I'm like, what?
A heartbreaking series of events, which not only saw LA eliminated in just the 1st round, but guess what? The same thing happened in their next season against the Utah Jazz. With Blake Griffin suffering a foot injury in Game 4, LA was kicked out again in just the 1st round of the postseason. So, was this the end of Crawford's NBA career? Would he ever get another chance to compete for a title? Well, with LA realizing their experiments had failed, they opted to make some serious moves, trading away both Chris Paul and Jamal Crawford, initially sending the 3-time 6th Man of the Year back to the Hawks, before Atlanta waived their former bench star, allowing Jamal to sign with the Minnesota Timberwolves. However, things weren't all bad. The Wolves, who had struggled historically, had just made a major move on draft day to acquire a super talented 2-way forward, Jimmy Butler, making the situation Crawford arrived into seemingly perfect until Jimmy Butler got injured as the regular season was coming to a close, resulting in Minnesota falling all the way from the 3rd seed to the 8th, meaning the Wolves, if they were to be the team that Jamal won his 1st ever ring on, were going to have to get past the number 1 seeded Houston Rockets, a franchise led by now league MVP James Harden and Jamal's former teammate Chris Paul, who made a mockery of Minnesota.
Never forget, we played Minnesota in the 1st round. Right? And it got funny to our team. Our team would be out there on the court, we'd be laughing because the other teams would be pissed. They would be pissed because they out there arguing. They're like, man, pass the ball. You ain't doing it. And we laugh like, yeah, because all that stuff y'all done ran 90% of the season, it's not working no more.
Dominating the injured Wolves in just 5 games. Therefore, having failed year after year after year, Crawford was ready for a massive change in his career, opting to sign with a rising franchise, the Phoenix Suns, to act as a mentor for their youthful roster, specifically for players like Devin Booker. But even though he was 39 years old, Jamal still had a lot left in the tank, and in Phoenix's final game of their terrible 2018-2019 season, Crawford was ready to show exactly what he had left.
And I told GP, and you can ask if you guys see him, I told him in the layup line, I'm going to put on a show tonight.
These fans, it's special. It's what you play the game for.
Crawford raising and connecting from long range. He's got 32. Not surprisingly, Jamal Crawford playing this one like it's a playoff game.
He's playing it like he's 10 years old again.
Yes.
In Biddy League.
Lego. Heat check. Noted. 45.
Not only had the Seattle native spoiled NBA legend Dirk Nowitzki's final home game for the Dallas Mavericks, but in what would ultimately become his final NBA game, Jamal had incredibly scored 51 points. While Crawford would receive another opportunity with the Brooklyn Nets in the 2019-2020 season, his career ultimately closed on that incredible night versus Dallas. Jamal's career will always be looked back on with pure joy, proof that you can bring a bit of streetball into the NBA. Speaking of streetballers, did you know that there was a player who played streetball professionally for &1 who not only made it all the way to the league, but used the same moves he once showcased on the blacktop courts of New York during the NBA Finals? If you want to learn more about the insane career of Rafer Alston, click the video on your screen right now.